Welcome to another edition of the Business and Personal Podcast, where we bring you closer to the people you do business with. And we're thrilled today to have Gene Hinojos on with us. He's one of the counselors at Enhancement Center in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Has an incredible personal story to share that kind of led him down this road. And I think you all are going to be very interested in hearing what he has to say and all the things they're doing to bring mental health to the forefront and getting more people to seek help. So first of all, Gene, thanks for joining us on your busy day. This is the Business and Personal Podcast. So let's find out a little bit about yourself first and what led you to the road of eventually working for the Enhancement Center.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me, Ryan. I've been working with the Enhancement Center since, I'd like to say, 2008. In 2008, I came aboard as a behavioral support consultant. And that was really a challenging understanding and recognizing how you deal with developmentally delayed individuals, which has kind of sharpened my skill set when it comes to working with individuals. And so that was the beginning of it. At that same time, I was also working for another organization as a therapist with them. So I was working as a therapist and then as a behavioral support consultant. All at the same time, I was finishing my graduate. So I was coming in as a lower level licensure and then work my way up through my master's degree and where I'm at today.
I think the good thing of the era that we're living in right now, Gene, is that mental health awareness is coming more to the forefront. Maybe it's a good thing that happened with COVID, that people aren't afraid to seek help. It's not a bad representation on you as a person. If anything, it's good, that you're trying to live a better life. Have you noticed that on your end too, that more and more people are being willing to seek help, especially younger people?
Yeah, more than our generation. I remember when I was growing up, mental illness was like for crazy people. At least that's what I was told, that if you weren't crazy, why are you going to go see and talk to a doctor or talk to a therapist? And we've changed quite a bit since that time. And, I'm really, really grateful for that. You're absolutely correct. During COVID, I'm pretty sure that a lot of people didn't realize that we were inundated with trauma constantly. And what goes on with that is that we vicariously got PTSD unaware of it because of us being inundated with that. So the majority of the world has PTSD and we're completely unaware of that's what's going on. So you can see people how they're acting or they're reacting. And I'm able to see a lot of that even when I'm driving my vehicle. People are not so tolerant anymore. Road rage and stuff is much more visible today than it has been in the past.
Yeah, I think, we all can use some form of counseling, maybe some more than others, but everybody could use at least some. And I think another thing that can help break the stigmas down, if people realize how often counselors like yourself seek counseling, right? That this isn't, you're on their side of the fence as well. And you are someone that has sought counseling yourself. So kind of explain that to our listeners, how important it is for yourself as well.
And well, in order for me to work with people that need help, I also have to be okay. And if I'm not okay, then there's no possible way that I can help the individual that's sitting in my office. As a matter of fact, if I look at it this way, and I was taught this way, that each one of us are at risk. So a bartender is going to be more at risk for developing an alcohol addiction if he's not careful. People that work in the casino can develop gambling addictions if they're not aware of what's going on with themselves. Me, I have a higher percentage of developing depression because I work with depression all day long. And so I have to be very, very clear and mindful of that, especially with some of the situations that I went through, in my own recovering from heroin and then the losses that I've had throughout my life. I needed to have another therapist there that was able to see beyond what I was capable of seeing. So it's very important as a therapist that I keep myself healthy.
What are kind of some benchmarks that people can look for? I'm sure everybody kind of responds to therapy in a different way, at a different rate. They're on a different timeline. But what are some basics that you kind of look for just so even the smallest things where people can see, all right, this is working. So it keeps them coming until they're fully recovered.
A lot of the times it's the rapport that you build with the therapist or you build with any individual. Without that rapport, you're not really going to do any of the good work that you need to. Some of those benchmarks you'll start to see behavior start to reduce. Let's say depressive symptoms will start to reduce, even beyond the use of medication. Sometimes you have to use medication management because what's going on is that the person with talk therapy by itself is not enough. And so they need another little added edge, and that may be, medications in SSRI or something along that form. And you can start to see the reduction of the behaviors at that time. Once you start to notice that, then, that's really cool. What's sad is that to get a person to recognize, it's not like a doctor, if you broke an arm, or a dentist, that you have a cavity, that you have that type of pain. By the time people are feeling this emotional pain, they're in trouble. And that by the time they come into my office, they're pretty sick. And they really need the attention more than they were experiencing. That's interesting. That's always been fascinating.
Yeah, and you have a very personal story as well, that we've all made mistakes in our life. Not a single one of us is perfect, but you've made a tremendous recovery from past mistakes to now doing tremendous things for people. And you're willing and vulnerable to be willing to share that story. You did it on local TV. I think it's important for people to hear it. So can you, as much as you want to share, kind of explain how you've recovered from past mistakes?
20 some years ago, I was doing a 4-year stay in New Mexico Corrections. It was a probation violation, but that wasn't why initially. That was the reason why I ended up in prison, but that wasn't initially what had happened. I was doing some shady stuff on the side there, and I ended up getting caught with what I was doing. And that ended up putting me incarcerated. Well, at that time, I was still using heroin, so I was trying to kick heroin, going to prison. And while I was in prison in those 4 years, I really had to make some really hard choices. How do you change in an environment that's not conducive to change? I mean, it's a dog-eat-dog environment. And in there, I started to make those changes. And as I started to get stronger, people started to notice that inside of there, in those environments, and started actually being somewhat protective of me, because they saw me as being different than they were. And I was like, how could I be different? I'm in the exact same environment as you are. How could I be any different than you are? And actually, they were like, the way you act, you're kind and you're compassionate, even in those environments. And so it was noticed in there. And at that moment when I came out, I said, I have to make some serious changes. And I decided to make serious changes. I went back to school, stopped using all substances. And during that time, I got real sick. I didn't know what was going on with me. Well, hepatitis C kicked in, and I was finishing my undergrad. And I got so sick that I had to stop going to school for my last class. They let me graduate, which was so cool. I ended up graduating. And I finished that class over the summer. But I got super sick. I was doing interferon, ribavirin, and I was losing weight, lost my hair, burnt out my thyroid, and I still never gave up. I still held on to the belief system that people can change, and that I didn't realize that I was a product of change. And then I was a role model of change. And then as time started to go on, I started to get stronger and stronger and stronger. And then 20 some odd years later, here I am, role modeling that behavior and teaching people that change is possible. I live for change. I mean, that's what we do, right? As a therapist, I live for change. And so hopefully other people recognize that same thing.
Is that something you use in your therapy sessions, to share your story for people that seem like they're really down on themselves and whatnot, to show how far you came back from that?
Yeah, sometimes I need to use that example. They can't really see it until I start to talk about exactly what my struggles were. They were like, oh my God, you struggle like that, Gene? And I was like, yes. I mean, you can't tell that now. Of course you can't see that. But internally, I'm always struggling. We all struggle. It's just that, how do we present that? A lot of the times people are so afraid, they're not vulnerable enough to do that. And in society, at times, it's difficult to show vulnerability because you can end up getting hurt. So in my sessions, I make sure I create vulnerability with myself to teach others to create vulnerability.
Makes perfect sense. Absolutely. And, it seems that addictions are at the center of a lot of the problems that people have that bring problems upon themselves. So the challenge is, how do you replace that addiction with something that's more positive as you start to become a better person? It's kind of a twofold question. In your case, like, what did you find that it was able to fulfill you and replace those addictions? And what are some things that you see people do that are able to get them out of that cycle they're in and utilize that for better?
Well, that's a really good question. For me, it was, being physical with myself. I was blue collar my whole entire life, and then sitting behind a chair, that was a struggle. I'm used to getting things done, and in therapy, you're never done. You're always evolving and stuff like that. So I had to find other passions. So for me, it's my spiritual belief. So getting in tied with the church again, getting back into that belief system for myself. Running, riding my bicycle, exercising. I love animals, so I have tons of animals around me: my dogs, my cats, my birds. Those types of things that still bring pleasure to me. My grandkids, having them near me, loving on them, give me some of that, where I would be neglectful with that at one time, where I wouldn't be able to see those things that are so important to me. Those things today are important. Living on my mom, my parents, taking care of the clients that I take care of. I was taught one time, and this is an old saying, if you find something that you love to do, you'll never work a day in your life. Well, I found something that I love to do, and I don't feel like I go to work every day. I go and I help, and that's such a blessing.
Is that a big part of what you're doing then when you're going through these counseling sessions, is to try to really dig deep and find the things that do give people joy and try to push them to spend more time on those sorts of things?
Correct. I'm trying to get them to look at something outside of what they normally look at. A lot of the times, I've learned that in my sessions, people are coming from a place of hurt, whether it was negative self-talk, how they were raised, how they punished themselves. Maybe they weren't a good parent like I was, and maybe I didn't do the right things. If I punish myself like that, I'll never be able to see the joy in life. I recognize what I've done wrong so that I don't continue to make those mistakes. But I don't forget that I have done those things. And so when I am called out on that, I am not one to run away from it. I can honestly say, yeah, I did make that mistake. And that's one thing that I love to teach, is that don't run away from your past. Your past doesn't necessarily have to define you, but it can refine you if you allow it to. It can make you better than who you are.
Then we have our good old friend, social media, that I always tell my kids, hey, let me know the next time that you spend 15, 20 minutes on social media and you feel better about things at the end of that time you were on there. And they haven't yet told me once, oh yeah, that was such a great session scrolling through social media. I feel like there's certainly a lot of positive with it, but my goodness, there seems to be so much negative, especially people trying to compare themselves to others and whatnot. How much does that enter into your conversations? How much time people are spending on social media and trying to make that time more positive, negative?
Oh man, that's this younger generation, and I feel bad for them. I mean, that's an outlet for them. That's all it is an outlet. And a lot of the times people make that their life. And I try to teach people, you got to be super careful about that. Not everything that comes into us edifies us, and not everything that we allow go out protects us. And so it's really looking at, how much time you want to spend in front of a computer, and then what kind of quality time are you going to spend in front of that? Just because you have 100 million friends doesn't mean you have 100 million friends. You have 100 million people that are following you, but what does that really mean? What are their favorite colors? What are their likes, their dislikes? Those personal things that you're not going to get that way. It's going to be very superficial. And so it's really teaching people. As a matter of fact, I was talking to these kids that are Generation Z, and they were saying, what is it that we need to do? And I was like, maybe you need to limit the amount of time that you stay on your computer, understanding about quality time within the computer, and then quality time outside of it. At one time in our generation, we were taught that, when the light pole and the light goes on outside, you need to be home, right? And then the parents couldn't get us to come back inside of the house. In this generation, it's hard to get the kids to go outside of the house. And then parents are so leery about letting their kids go out. I rarely see kids playing outside anymore, playing basketball, playing baseball, playing any of those, throwing, frisbees or any of that stuff at the parks. Any of those things are no longer utilized the way we used to. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. I know that we have to evolve, but I'm saying that we are lacking that within our younger population. They're not being able to do those things, and it saddens me.
Yeah, and I'm just hoping that we can reach it's going to be a very hard point to get to, but where we can just find this happy medium with social media at some point in our lives. I'm part of a nonprofit. We use social media to generate donations, and it's outstanding for those sorts of things. Boy, would it be great if we could put our focus on social media more on those things and not the negative. But the toothpaste is out of the tube, so now we can just hope to do our best that we can going forward.
Correct.
Any other thoughts on that?
I just think that it's going to evolve. The pendulum has swung one direction. It hasn't come completely black in the middle. So I'm hoping that eventually that we can get to that we can still go out there, throw the Frisbee, still have social media around us, maybe looking at it one way and then putting our phones down and then going out and being a family and then coming back to it as we need to, and we utilize it more as a tool, instead of utilizing it the way it's being utilized.
And it's going to come down to just each individual person being intentional about it over the course of
Correct.
time. I always like to share success stories, and I know we could probably go on for an hour for all the success stories you've had. And of course, with privacy, we're not going to give names out or whatnot. But is there one that sticks out to you from someone that you helped that you saw make tremendous strides through therapy?
It's the young lady that I had talked about when I was meeting with the news station. She was very young, 13 years old, addicted to heroin, and the family was a Spanish-speaking family that couldn't find the assistance that they needed with this young lady. She stayed working for me about 8 months, struggling, man. I mean, just struggling. Couldn't see straight about her self-worth, the family worth. The family was getting sick. She was getting sick, and they couldn't find the right direction. Somebody had talked to them about a bilingual therapist that had struggled with heroin addictions, that had lived a very different life, and they brought her to me. I worked with her, like I said, for about 8 months. And then I stopped seeing her for years. It was like years. All of a sudden, she must have been about 14 or 15. And then I don't see her again. And then when I see her again, when I get a call, surprising to me, it's her mom. And, I'm listening to her, and her mom's telling me about what a great job I had done. And I was like, I didn't do this. She did this. How could I have done this? I mean, she was the one that was listening. I just guided her. And so the mom says, no, you need to hear my daughter. And so she went and got her daughter. Daughter came in and she was talking to me, and she was like, no, Gene. It was your voice that I heard every single time that I wanted to use. It was your voice that reminded me how important I was as a person. And I had to hear that. She was she graduated college, was getting married, has a daughter. Those things we're not going to hear about when young ladies. I mean, I've seen people that at that age that had died. I lost my son to a heroin overdose when he was 25 years old. So I know how deadly this drug can be. She was such a success story. And I have multiple success stories like that.
Yeah, when you say you never feel like you work, Gene, that's exactly why right there. I'm sure you have plenty of others situations like that were so fulfilling for you. So for anybody that's still listening to this podcast, they're probably interested in the services you have to offer. Hopefully we can generate some more success stories for you. What is the best way for them to reach out to you, the Enhancement Center, and try to get the help you need?
The best way that you can get a hold of us is go ahead and give a call to the Enhancement Center. The number there is area code 505-891-1583. Or you can meet me directly at area code 505-573-9888.
Fantastic, Gene. We appreciate you sharing this awesome knowledge and your own personal journey as well that I think everybody's going to find inspiring, and would love to have you on down the road maybe for an update.
Oh, I'd love to do that, Ryan. And thank you once again for having me. I appreciate it very, very much.